All right, good afternoon, everyone. The purpose of this recording is to review the Zoom phone user training for UCLA. My name is Paul Race. I'm the Education Customer Success Manager who has the honor and privilege of working with all of you here today. I'm going to share my screen here and we'll go over some just initial notes here to kind of give us a launch pad for our session here this afternoon. Couple of things I want to give a quick shout to is that we will be having periodic pauses for Q&A, but just make sure that you guys are on mute here as we are recording. Want to make sure that we've got a nice clean recording that we can share post-session. However, I will be pausing throughout different periods of our user training here today, looking at some of the questions that have come in via the chat. So feel free to pop those questions in organically. Michael and Samantha and team may be going in there and addressing those top of mind, but we'll have some periodic pauses as well, just to make sure that we can surface that knowledge for the rest of the group. And then on the learning side, what we're going to be covering are essentially three main buckets for leveraging Zoom Phone. Now, there's some parodies between them, and there's also some differences between them. I always like to start first with the Zoom web portal. And the best way to describe the Zoom web portal is the engine room. It's going to be where you go to access all of the backend configuration, advanced settings, your business hours, setting up your holidays, some additional configurations too that will update in real time when we talk a little bit about the desktop client in my next section, and then finally the Zoom mobile app. The Zoom web portal can be accessed through your preferred Google Chrome browser or Firefox, but I do recommend using Google Chrome. It plays quite nicely with our platform overall. What you'll do first is launch Google Chrome, and then on this slide that you see here, you're going to navigate to the ucla.zoom landing page, and that's going to give you access to this view that you are seeing here. The Zoom web portal, as I mentioned, is not going to be the place where you're going to go to launch any of your meetings or make or receive phone calls. Again, think of it just like the backend system for configuring all the advanced features and tools that will render in real time on the front-facing side of the Zoom desktop application on your computer, and then again on your mobile device. Now, to kind of set the stage for our user training here today, I'm going to operate in the realm of the ideal. And what I mean by that is we're going to make some assumptions throughout our presentation here today, assuming that you've already got Zoom Phone assigned to you, you've already had your license assigned to you, we've already completed a majority of the advanced configuration with Zoom's professional services team. So we're going to operate under the assumption of 100% completion. On the left-hand side here, you will see the Zoom web portal. Now you'll have your personal section at the top, which includes your profile, any licenses that you may have been assigned to, like webinars or meetings, etc. And then you will see the phone button. Below that is this admin section. Don't worry too much about that. This is only for Zoom admins of the UCLA tenant. So a majority of you on the call here today, you won't see this admin section. So don't be looking for it. It's likely not going to be there, but I do want to draw each of your attention to this phone tab. This is where we're going to spend a majority of our time here on the web portal. And I'd first like to give a quick call out here to your quick start settings. So when you click that phone button, it's going to take you to this initial setup screen, and it's going to ask for these four fields to be filled in first. The first of which is going to be selecting your country code, area code, time zone, and then entering your PIN code to listen to voicemail by telephone. What you would do is then fill in those required fields, click setup, and that quick start setup screen will be removed. It is a one-time setup. Don't worry if you, let's say, make a mistake and you put in the wrong country code, area code, you want to maybe change, edit, or view your voicemail PIN by telephone. I'll cover all of those sections in my next preceding slides. But we're going to, again, assume everything is filled out the way that you like, and we're going to click that blue setup button. Clicking that blue setup button will remove that initial setup screen, and we're still on that phone tab. Now, once we've completed that quick start setup, you're going to see history, voicemail, recording, and settings. For the purpose of today's training, we're primarily going to be focusing specifically on this settings gear. Once on the settings tab, you'll see your phone number listed at the top. Below that, you'll have your outbound caller ID, which will be defaulted to your outbound caller number, which will be assigned to you. You'll have your country and area code here. So that was a part of the quick start setup that we covered at the very beginning. So if you ever need to change or modify those, this is where those locations will be stored. And below that is going to be your call handling specifically for business hours. These are quite important. These are going to be your hours of operation throughout the day and will allow Zoom phone users to dial to you throughout your designated work days. When you click that blue edit button adjacent to those business days and business hours, it's going to expand this view that you see here. So it'll have the days of the week, and then you can set up customizations here, setting some of your business hours from Monday through Friday, whether that be 9 to 6, 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 8 to 3, maybe you take off on Fridays. You could customize these as you see fit. Below that is going to be call handling, and this is going to automatically default to Zoom applications. So please make sure that you don't change that. If at any point in time you are unable to make and receive phone calls, the first thing that I would probably recommend checking is just making sure that your call handling hasn't changed, or maybe you made an edit there by mistake. Just leave that as Zoom applications. That way calls can be sent and received. Below the call handling is your call handling ring mode, your max wait time. I oftentimes get questions on what is max wait time? What is the interval of time as a best practice? Max wait time essentially means how long do you want someone that's trying to call you to be on that phone while it's ringing before an action has taken place, specifically you answering the phone or maybe the secondary having it forwarded to your voicemail. I would always recommend about 30 seconds, but if you click the little drop-down caret here, you can increase that max wait time or you can decrease it as you see fit, but 30 seconds seems to be the sweet spot. Once you've selected your max wait time, you're going to have another call to action. So when that 30 seconds of max wait time has been reached, what do you want the action to be for the person that has called you? More often than not, you're probably going to want to select forward to voicemail. We do provide some other options like disconnect, but I would recommend setting up a customized voicemail greeting. When you select that customized voicemail greeting, there'll be some additional options for you in my next slide, and we'll cover some of the 3 different avenues that you can go for setting up a custom voicemail. Below that will be your closed hours. So these work in parallel to your business hours. So these are going to be the hours that you're not going to be working. And then you can set like a max wait time for ringing and then another call to action there forward to voicemail. That way, if it's beyond your office hours, the days of the week and hours that you set as part of your workday, when someone calls outside of those hours, there will be some calls to action there. That way, when you log in to the next day, you'll be able to see those missed calls as well as the voicemails that have been left. Next, let's briefly cover a little bit of the functionality for your custom voicemail greeting. So in the background here, you're going to see the business hours that we just covered. We talked about the max wait time. We talked about what happens when a call is not answered. And since we selected the forward to voicemail option, another drop-down option will populate for you. And that's going to be the voicemail greeting section. If you don't want to maybe take it a few steps further and you're okay with the default voicemail greeting, you could just leave it as the default. But if you want to take it a few steps further and provide a custom voicemail greeting, you're going to click that blue audio library button, and it's going to open up this window in front of you. Once you're in that audio library view, you'll be able to click the Add Audio button. Clicking that will expand another window for you, and you'll have 3 different options that you can set as your voicemail greeting. The first is going to be text to speech. So you can set a voice American English, or if you prefer, let's say a savvy British accent, you can select that from the dropdown as well as the gender for the voice, and then the message that you would like that voice to display when someone calls and is forwarded to voicemail. Adjacent to that is record by computer. So this would be the recommendation I would make for all of you. The record by computer gives you the ability to set a custom voicemail greeting using your own voice. Hello, you've reached Paul Race. Thank you very much for calling. I'm currently unavailable. Please leave your name, number, and a brief message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. It'll then allow you to play back that recording. And if you like the way that it sounds, you can then click the add and it'll save in real time for you. If you have, let's say, an audio file saved to your computer that you would like to leverage as part of your custom voicemail greeting, you could go to the Upload tab here, select that file from your computer, click Add, and then Save, and then it'll save that voicemail greeting in real time. Now, to show a little bit more about some of the holiday lists and call handling, I do want to just briefly preface that we aren't leaving anywhere on the screen here. We're still in that phone button. We were in that settings tab at the top. And I want you to imagine that we're simply just scrolling down the page under the settings tab. So when you continue to scroll down the settings section, you will eventually land on the holiday list and call handling. This is where you can go to add custom holidays, whether those are unique to maybe UCLA, maybe some time off that you may be taking, the vacation to Hawaii that you've had on your calendar for quite some time. To do so, you would click the add button, enter in the holiday name, and then select the date range that you're going to be taking off. Continuing to scroll down the phone tab under settings, you will eventually reach the others section. But briefly above that is PIN code. So if you recall from the very beginning of this particular section, we were talking about the quick start setup links and the voicemail PIN. This is where you would go to edit that PIN code. If you ever feel like you want to change that number, or maybe you just want a quick refresher to remind yourself, you could click show or edit to update that voicemail PIN code. Below that, under others, is voicemail access. So what is unique about the platform is that you do have the ability to provide one or multiple users with access to your voicemail inbox. To do so, you would click the add button and then enter in the user's information below once the fields populate, and then it'll save that user's contact information in real time. But more importantly, when that user does have access to your voicemail inbox, just make sure that you go to your PIN code, make sure that you send your PIN code over for your voicemail, such that that user that may be covering for you while you're on the beaches in Oahu, they'll be able to access your inbox there, and you have that peace of mind that you can at least rest easy knowing that work is being completed. Below voicemail is blocked lists. So this is quite unique in the sense that Zoom does provide you to flag calls for either spam or for block calls for other reasons. And anytime you block a call for other reasons, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get to some of my next preceding slides, but should you ever block a call for any other reason other than spam, all of those block call numbers will stay and live in the web portal, and those will be available under others and then blocked lists. You can then view or edit the list of numbers that you have blocked for other reasons. And if you want to take it one step further where you want to block calls without a caller ID, you can click and hold this widget and toggle it to the right, and then therefore after it'll also block all calls without a caller ID. Below the block list is your hold music. So again, works very similar to the audio library for voicemail greetings. You can select from our dropdown of default options, or you can select from our audio library. Finally, below that is the audio prompt language. So it does default to American English, but you also have some additional languages based on the role that you have, or maybe the community of users that you may be interacting with on a daily basis. And that covers the web portal. So in quick summary, the web portal is the engine room. It's not where you're going to be going to make or receive phone calls. It's going to be the section of the Zoom technology where you will go to set up some of your advanced configuration, like your closed hours, office hours, your voicemail PIN, country code, area code, voicemail access, and all the nitty-gritties that will help basically leverage a good, positive Zoom experience when you are making and receiving phone calls using the desktop client, which we will cover next. I will take a quick pause here to see if any questions have come up so far, or if there are any questions from the crowd so far as well. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. All right, I will move forward with the desktop client. How can I get my phone number? That's going to be taken care of by the UCLA technical team, so that is forthcoming. So just be patient with us while we get everything situated on the back end, but that should be forthcoming, and I'm sure Samantha and Michael can give more clarification on that when the time is right. My pleasure. All right, let's go into the desktop client. So opposite of the Zoom web portal, where the Zoom web portal is the engine room where you're not going to be going to make and receive phone calls, the desktop client is going to be the opposite of that. This is going to be the application that you're going to download on your computer that will allow you to make and receive phone calls, as well as join existing meetings or even join or launch a new meeting entirely. Like any application that you have to download on your computer, you will need to first navigate to zoom.us/download and find the Zoom client for meetings. Now, I oftentimes get questions, well, is Zoom Phone included in the Zoom client for meetings download? Is there a separate section I should go to? The Zoom client for meetings is the motherboard, if you will, the mothership. And the Zoom Phone license that you guys will be assigned to with your phone number is just simply an add-on to the client. So you are in the right spot. You just need to download the Zoom client for meetings. And then once your Zoom Phone license and phone number have been assigned to you, you'll be able to see this phone button on the right-hand side. Now, just like any application, and I believe you guys may be a Slack shop, right? In order for you to, let's say, use Slack, you first need to be logged into Slack. The Zoom desktop application works the same way. So in order to begin making and receiving phone calls, you do need to be logged in to the Zoom desktop client in order for you to access some of the tools within the application itself. On the right-hand side is a quick little snapshot of what the desktop client will look like to you when you're on the home screen. So briefly want to touch on some of the tools and navigation available to you. On the home screen, you'll see new meeting. So this is what we call an instant meeting. If you have to spin up an ad hoc meeting on the fly, clicking that new meeting button will allow you to launch a new session ad hoc, and then you could invite different users that need to be pulled into that session. If, let's say, you're going to be joining an existing meeting already live, then you can put in the meeting ID if that's been provided to you, and then click join, and that'll allow you to proxy into that live session. The schedule below here, this is going to provide a list of your upcoming meetings for the day, but this is also provided on the right-hand side. So on the right-hand side, this will provide all of your meetings for that current day. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to provide like what your next 48 hours, 3 days, 5, 7, 10 days, 30 days of meetings look like. It would be a lot of scrolling. So we just populate at least the current date there and then give you a list of the things that are on your plate for that given day. On the top right-hand side is going to be your profile icon. And then above that is this green circle. This is a status. So green means go. Green means that you have been logged into the desktop client. You're not in a meeting. You're not on a phone call. You're available to be phone called or brought into a meeting. You're available to talk. We'll talk a little bit more about statuses in just a moment. But below that, I want to briefly call out this settings gear. The settings gear, when you click it, will open up this window on the right-hand side. It'll have your username and email at the top. We're going to skip over this settings gear for just a second as I want to address some additional options below, specifically these statuses. So statuses can also change based on your calendar. So if you've synced up maybe your Google Calendar or Outlook calendar, if you have events scheduled on your calendar, it'll update your status in real time. But also you have the ability to change your status as you see fit throughout your workday. As I mentioned, green means go. Green means you're available to be brought into a meeting or to be dialed into a phone call. You also have this away button. The away button basically lets users know that you are logged into the desktop client. However, you may have stepped away from your computer for a few minutes. The one below that is do not disturb. I oftentimes use do not disturb during my lunch. So when I'm ready to take my lunch, I'll put on the do not disturb here. I'll navigate over to this little caret option, and then I'll select the interval of time that I'll be away while I take my lunch. When you do select Do Not Disturb, what it's going to do is it's going to mute all notifications, phone calls, and meeting requests directly coming into the desktop client. When you come back from that, let's say lunch period, or when you come back online, you'll have some indicators on the desktop client, like you see here for chat, for example. If you had any missed phone calls, you'll see a red bubble here and then the number to indicate how many phone calls you may have received. And then you can click into the phone button to listen to those voicemails if they've been left, or check your call history to see who had called you while you were away. Continuing on the bottom is check for updates. I would highly recommend to make sure that you're always on the most current version of Zoom. We make weekly updates, and frankly, it's very easy to get behind on your minimum version. So every month or so, I would just recommend maybe going into the settings gear, check what version of Zoom you're on, and then if an update is available, I would recommend updating. Beyond some of the features that we release, every week to 2 weeks, we also provide bug fixes and hot fixes roughly in between those intervals of time. So if you're maybe experiencing an issue, the best path forward is to briefly update your desktop client, and 99% of the time that's going to fix the issue. Circling back up to this settings gear, we will talk a little bit about the settings gear for the desktop client. Now, when I click this settings gear, these are going to be unique just to the desktop client. Now, these are different from the settings that we covered in the web portal. The web portal is like your advanced settings, whereas these are just unique settings just for the desktop client itself. You have general all the way down to accessibility, and we're going to cover some of the most important ones here for you relevant to Zoom Phone. The first is going to be audio. So when you click this audio tab, you're going to be able to check your speaker and microphone input outputs. It does default to your computer's local speaker as well as your local microphone on your computer. However, you do have the ability to incorporate, let's say, a external speaker or an external microphone. To do so, you would just click that drop-down option and there'll be an additional section there to integrate that third-party speaker or microphone. However, as a best practice, I would recommend whichever way you go, if it's defaulted to your computer or an external speaker or microphone, just do a quick little test of that speaker as well as a test of the microphone to make sure the input as well as output levels are moving as expected. Below the speaker and microphone section is the suppress background noise. So this does default to auto, but you do have the ability to customize some of the options here, whether you want low, medium, or high. Some use cases for this would be some of you that may be doing hybrid work where you're going to be coming into an office with a few colleagues to the left and right of you, or maybe coming home and you got the Amazon delivery person coming at all hours of the afternoon. So to make sure that you're coming in clear while on a phone call or a meeting, I would recommend suppressing the background noise to auto. What that will do is it'll automatically detect when you're in a meeting or phone call any background noise that may be occurring, and then the AI will automatically suppress that for you. That way you can come in nice and clear while in a meeting or while on a phone call. Next is the phone button. So this is where you would go to check your direct number. So it'll have your phone number listed at the top. As I discussed earlier, your default for calls will always be the Zoom application, so don't change that. I do want to give a quick call out to this button here, hide incoming calls while in a meeting. This is a feature that is defaulted to off, but I wish it was defaulted to on. So this would definitely be a setting I would encourage you guys to enable once you get your Zoom Phone license and phone number provisioned to you. What this setting will do is while you're in a meeting, let's say giving a presentation as the host, or maybe you're joining as the participant, if someone were to call you while you're in that presentation or while you're in that meeting as a participant, the Zoom desktop client is going to hide that incoming call, and it'll use the max wait time that you set in the Zoom web portal and then the call to action to forward to voicemail. That way there's no meeting disruption while you're giving that major presentation or while you're attending that high level meeting. At the end of that meeting, when you exit, you'll see a little notification for when someone had maybe called you. If someone had called and left a voicemail, not only will you see an indicator for that within the desktop client, which I'll show in a moment, You'll also have a feedback loop of an email being sent to you for voicemails received, and then the ability to listen to that transcription directly within your inbox. I oftentimes get questions on the location permission here, so you don't need to worry about this right now, but I just want to give a quick call out to this. This is going to be addressed with our professional services team and your UCLA Zoom phone admins. Essentially, what this location permission entails is to route emergency services to your location. No need to take any action with that right now. I just want you to be aware of it for transparency. We will later address some of the E911 and Nomadic 911 at a later time. I just wanted to give a quick call out to that particular section here. So we were in the Home tab. We were formerly in the Settings gear. To access some of your phone functionality, you'll just simply click the Phone button. And I want to give a brief little overview here of what to expect once you're in the Phone tab. You're going to have your history all the way down to lines. We won't be incorporating SMS text messaging, so you'll likely only have history, voicemail, and then lines. Your history is going to give you a little Rolodex there of everyone that has called you, whether those are missed calls, whether you made an outbound call, incoming calls. And then below that is this little all history caret. You can filter based on specific date and time ranges. When in the call history, if you want to get some additional options for a user, for example, we have Jeffrey here, area of code 408. We can call that user back in our history. If they had left a voicemail, we can play any voicemail left. We can also click this 3-dot ellipses here, which will give you some additional options for that user. We talked a little bit about blocking phone numbers, and we'll talk a little bit further about spam calls specifically. But this would be the section where you would go if you've identified a spam caller or if you need to block a number for other reasons. That's going to be done through the 3-dot ellipses, block number, and then you'll click the caret here and it'll give you 2 additional options, which I have a screenshot for in just a moment. On the right-hand side is going to be the dial pad. So it works just like a traditional dial pad. You'd click those numbers for the number you'd like to call, and then click the blue button here to send that, to call that individual that you would like to reach. The voicemail tab is where you're going to have access to all voicemails that have been left to you. What that would look like is above chat here, you see this number 34 in a red bubble. It would work the same way. So let's say we were in a meeting, we had hide incoming calls while in a meeting, and then we got out of that meeting. And if you saw a red bubble here with an indicator of 1, that would let you know that you had a missed call within Zoom Phone. You click that phone button, you'll also see another indicator, a white red bubble here with a white number to indicate that you have a voicemail that you received. As I mentioned, you'll also receive an email letting you know a voicemail has been received as well. So there's going to be 3 different ways that you'll be able to have feedback loops for A, missed calls, or B, any voicemails that you've received. When looking into any voicemails that have hit your voicemail inbox within Zoom Phone, you'll have the user's information at the top, the voicemail transcription below, the ability to call back that user, play that voicemail. You can click and hold this blue button to fast forward or rewind through that voicemail. Clicking the 3-dot ellipses allows you to access additional options. You can copy that phone number if you need to send it, let's say in an email, or let's say Slack, or whatever communication system you may need to use. You can download that file. You can open it, save it into your computer, show it in your computer's Finder, and then you can finally delete that voicemail entry, or you can delete all voicemails in your voicemail queue. The Lines tab is where you're going to have access to your personal line. It's also going to be where phone active calls will be pushed through when you are in a phone call. I have a few slides to cover that in just a moment, but just know that this is where you would go to access your personal line. Also, you do have caller ID here. I just want to give a quick call out that your direct number will always be the default for caller ID. All right, so let's talk a little bit about active call walkthroughs. Before I do so, has there been any questions so far that we could help bubble up here before I give some demos here of some of the active calls?
Hi, Paul. Not really. Chris just answered a few questions. I think we're good for now.
Okay, terrific. All right, so let's go through some example active calls that you may encounter throughout your day-to-days while using Zoom Phone. So on the right-hand side, this is an example of what an incoming call will look like. Again, you have to be logged into the desktop client in order for you to be receiving phone calls. So indicator here, green means go, green means online. And then we have this caller here for 720. It'll be a small little pop-up that will populate in the Zoom desktop client. You'll have the ability to accept or decline that message. Once you've accepted that call will then move into the lines tab. So it'll say that you're on a call with area code 408 and then connected with you at the bottom. Once you've accepted that phone call, the dial pad will populate on the right-hand side, and you'll have the ability to mute that user, mute yourself, excuse me, if you need to maybe speak to a colleague adjacent to you. You have the keypad option here if you need to dial out to another number. You can elevate this to speaker. You do have the ability to add additional users into that phone call. And what is unique about that is that you have the ability to add up to 3 people to that phone call. And as long as those 3 people are Zoom Phone users at UCLA, on the 4th person that you would like to add to that phone call, Zoom is going to automatically elevate that 3-way phone call with adding the 4th to a meeting. That way, when that 4th person is brought in, so long as they're a UCLA Zoom user, they will then automatically be elevated to a meeting. Below that is the hold option, so you can place this user on hold. I have some demos here on transferring, so we'll cover that in just a moment. You do have the ability to record some of your voice, some of your conversations as well using Zoom Phone. That'll be stored within the web portal. And if you are on a phone call with a UCLA Zoom Phone user, you do have the ability to elevate that phone call directly to a meeting one-to-one, but you also have that caveat. If you go up to 4 people, it'll automatically elevate to a meeting. Adjacent to that is the 3-dot ellipses for more options. You can also place a call on park, which places the call on hold for another user to pick up. Another section where you can invite a user to a meeting. Or if this view here is just a little bit too big for you, you can also minimize and shrink the size of your phone calls. That way it's maybe a little smaller. So let's briefly talk a little bit about how to add another user to an existing phone call. So on this example here, we're currently on the phone with area code 408, and I would like to add another user to this phone call. I would click the plus add call button. I would then dial the number of the user I would like to call. It'll then call that secondary user while putting the first user, area code 408, on hold. I would then be able to talk to that user. In this case, we have the user's name, Marie. Marie would pick up and say, yes, Paul, I've been waiting to talk to area code 408. Thank you very much for connecting me. What I would then do is say, perfect, Marie, I'm going to now merge the call between you and then area code 408 on hold. To merge that call, you would click the merge button adjacent to the 3-dot ellipses. Once those calls have been merged, you'll see both of those users in the phone list here. So you'll have the secondary person that you called and then the first caller, area code 408, that was on hold, and the little indicator here letting you know that those calls have been merged. Let's talk about call transfer. So I've got David here on the line, and I would like to transfer David to another user. I could click the call transfer button. I would then dial the number of the user that I would like to connect that person with. Now, when you are trying to transfer a user to another user within Zoom Phone, you have 3 transfer options. The first is what we call a warm transfer, which means you're going to speak to the secondary person before transferring them to the person on hold on the first line. You could also do a blind transfer. So while you have someone on hold, you could just immediately transfer them over to the person they're trying to reach without doing a warm conversation before connecting them. Or you can transfer that user directly to the secondary person's voicemail. In this example, we'll do the warm transfer. We have area code 408 on hold. I'm calling the secondary user to complete the transfer. We'll then talk to that secondary user. In this case, their name is Tyler. Tyler will say, yes, please complete the transfer. I'm looking forward to speaking with area code 408. I would click the complete transfer button. You'll get a little indicator on the top right that the transfer was successful. And then Tyler will be able to have a conversation with area code 408. Now, we talked a little bit about blocking phone calls in the very beginning of the presentation here for the desktop client. So to block a phone call, again, you're going to go into history. You'll click the three-dot ellipses if you've identified a spam caller. You'll follow the prompt here for block caller, and then you have those two options for you. The first is going to be to flag this as spam, and this is something I would highly encourage you to do, not only to protect your time while you're working throughout the day-to-days and also indicating something as spam. It does provide our product team and engineering with a record of spam callers. And when we make future enhancements to our product, we take it into consideration the numbers that have been flagged from our users. So definitely rely on your assistance and help to flag those spam callers, such that we can make sure that when we do make releases, those numbers are continued to be flagged as spam. The secondary option is for other reasons. So for other reasons, if anything beyond a spam call, if you would like to block that number that you blocked for other reasons would live in that blocked list in the web portal that we covered at the very beginning. Of course, if you made a mistake and accidentally didn't mean to block area code 530 here, you could just go into the web portal, go into the settings section, navigate all the way down to the bottom where we were talking about the others section. And then where you would find the ability to view and edit is going to be under blocked list. So don't worry if you make a mistake. It's all in the web portal under the others section for unblocking numbers as you need. And that's everything for the Zoom desktop client. So in quick summary, the Zoom desktop client is what you're going to be using to launch and attend some of your day-to-day meetings, as well as leverage Zoom Phone for a variety of different reasons, whether those are receiving phone calls, call transfers, placing a call on hold. You can add up to 3 people to a phone call, and on that 4th user, it'll elevate to a meeting, so long as everyone is a Zoom Phone user at UCLA. I'll take a quick pause here before wrapping up with our final section, which will be the Zoom mobile application. Samantha and Michael, any questions that come into the chat here that we'd like to elevate for our discussion here?
Just one. Chris had a question. I think, Chris, did you want to ask?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so I was just curious. You said, and you just did sort of follow up on it at the end, ask about the adding more people to a call beyond the 3 and it being elevated to a Zoom call. I was just curious, like, what's the experience for someone that is not on Zoom or on a computer? Do they just get added via a phone and should just be aware of that so that we don't start sharing stuff on the screen?
Yeah, it's only going to elevate the users from 3 to 4, and on that 4th user to a Zoom meeting, so long as everyone is a Zoom user. If you have one person that's not, then you'll just be able to add that additional caller to that conversation.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. So you can go, oh, very cool.
Yeah. So again, the system does it by design for Zoom users specifically. So on that 4th user, it will elevate to a meeting so long as everyone is identified as a Zoom user.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. My pleasure.
And that's pretty much it for now.
Cool. Samantha, anything you've seen on your end or anything I may have missed that you'd like to spotlight here for the team on the call?
Not that I can tell.
Okay. Terrific. So everyone, let's briefly touch on the Zoom mobile app. So you're going to see some parity here between what we just covered on the desktop client and then what we're going to cover on the Zoom mobile app. The Zoom mobile app is going to be available to you on the App Store or the Google Play Store. You simply need to search within the application settings there, Zoom. It'll come up as your first entry. You'll then download the Zoom mobile application and just make sure that you click the sign in with SSO, single sign-on option, and then enter in your UCLA login credentials that you use every day. Once you've entered in your UCLA login credentials, you'll see this view that you see here. So just want to give you some quick navigation tips here. So you'll have the keypad located at the top left, your history all the way down the lines. We won't have SMS. So you will have history, voicemail, and the line section. Under the phone button here, this is where you would go to access this section. And then under all history, you can do some advanced filtering if you'd like to maybe bundle your phone calls in a particular view based on date and time. Similar to what we covered in the desktop client, when you hover over a user and click the three-dot ellipses here, this does give additional options for that user. You can call that user back, copy their phone number if you need to maybe paste it into an email on your phone or otherwise, or even Slack for that matter. You can delete that entry or you can cancel out. The voicemail tab here is identical to what we saw on the desktop client. And again, just to make sure I don't miss this, you will also receive an email. So don't worry, you will always have multiple feedback loops here, whether those are in the desktop client on your computer. If you're not on the desktop client on your computer, but you're logged into Zoom on your phone, you will also get a notification on your phone, as well as an email of received voicemail to your inbox. It'll have the user's information at the top, the transcription of the voicemail. It doesn't say it here, but if let's say you're on Bluetooth, it does have the ability to sync your Bluetooth. For me, I use Bose headphones, so I can sync up my Bose headphones to my voicemail as well through the Zoom app. And then I could also delete that entry or call that user back if I so choose. The lines tab here is going to be where phone calls will be driven to. This is the line section where you'll have access to your line, as well as the keypad up at the top here. And then when you click that keypad, this will be your dial pad for dialing phone numbers out. Pretty simple. So we'll end here on resources and support. And in summary, there are endless resources out there. One thing that we do very, very well is we are very good documenters here at Zoom. And we've documented endless materials for you guys, whether those are through our knowledge base, like quick start guides, brief video tutorials, maybe 1 to 2 minutes, like how to place a phone call, place a call on hold, transferring of calls. We also have specific topics as well. So if you're looking for a specific topic that maybe we covered here and maybe you want some documentation on it, you could search that through the search bar through support.zoom.us. And what is really cool about our support landing page is that it works like a Google search. So if you search a particular topic here, it browses every piece of documentation that we have that fits that search criteria, whether those are support articles, videos, user guides, everything in between. We also provide what we call our Learning Center. And what the Learning Center essentially entails, think of it like LinkedIn Learning, but more all things Zoom. So when you go to the Learning Center at learning.zoom.us, you have the ability to take on some different classes here. These are short little learning modules, not very labor intensive or time consuming, but they give you a little bit more training on your own terms in terms of maybe it's lunch and you maybe just want to brush up on getting started with Zoom phone and you don't want to listen to a long, lengthy recording. You just want maybe high levels. You can actually click through the getting started with Zoom phone. It'll walk you through some courses and learning materials. It also allows you to register for live training through our enablement team. So as I mentioned, we make releases like every other week, it feels, or every week sometimes. And we do provide user training through webinars with our enablement team. So if there's a particular feature or functionality that may have been released, or if you maybe just want to resharpen your Zoom phone skills, you can actually attend and register through some of those live trainings. And our enablement team does a fantastic job delivering an well-executed overview of some of the newest features of Zoom phone.